Once after my grandfather died, the family sat to divide fairly. They searched an hour for the will. I, the granddaughter, raised my phone. This, I played his voice note. Two stood up and left. I stood by the empty safe and watched my hand shake as I held the phone. People were shouting around me. Harrison demanded to see what I was hiding. Clarissa sobbed, pressing her palms to her face. Mom nervously fiddled with the necklace around her neck, an old habit when she didn't know what to do. Roger was silent, as always, but his jaws were clenched so tightly that I could see the muscles tense. I pressed the screen of the phone. Grandpa Finian's voice filled the room, hoarse but firm, so familiar that I wanted to cry, and we all fell silent instantly. I held back my tears. Not now. If you're listening to this, Grandpa began, it means I'm dead and you're about to divide up what I left behind. Harrison, I know you stole money from me 5 years ago. $30,000. I still loved you, but you won't see the will in the form you expect. Harrison froze. His face turned red, then white as chalk. He turned abruptly and walked to the door without looking at anyone. We heard the door slam, then the sound of a car engine. "Bridget," Grandpa continued, and I saw Mom flinch. "It's time to tell Roger the truth about who Clarissa's real father is." The silence was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. Mom grabbed the edge of the table, her fingers turning white. She looked at Roger, then at Clarissa, then at me. There was panic in her eyes. Then she too stood up abruptly and left the room. We heard her footsteps on the stairs, then the bedroom door slam. Clarissa stared into space. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Denver, her husband, put his hand on her shoulder. But she didn't even flinch. Roger sat motionless in Grandpa's old leather chair. His face was expressionless. Absolutely nothing. Now about the real inheritance. Grandfather's voice softened. I have 2 wills. One is with Gilbride, the notary, the official one, and it has special instructions. The second is the one I really wanted to leave, and it leads to the notary. Miro, you know where to look for clues. The rest of you can look too. Whoever brings the necessary documents to the notary first within 7 days will receive the will and find out everything else. Gilbride knows the rules. The recording ended. I turned off the phone and hid it in my pocket. Everyone was looking at me. I had to go back. Back to when it all started. Grandpa Finian died a week ago, a stroke sudden and quick, though expected at his age, sadly. The doctor said he didn't suffer. I don't know if that's true or if they were just trying to reassure us. I was the last to arrive at the hospital. I didn't make it in time. Mom was already sitting in the hallway with red eyes. Clarissa was sobbing on Denver's shoulder, and Harrison was smoking at the entrance, even though there was a no smoking sign hanging there. The funeral was 3 days ago. Many people came. My grandfather had worked as an inspector at the railway depot for 30 years, and everyone knew him. I stood aside and watched as everyone said kind words, cried, and hugged each other, but I couldn't cry. I just stood there and looked at the coffin, thinking, that's it. The only person who understood me is gone. My grandfather was a difficult man, not mean, but firm. He didn't like small talk or insincerity. He said what he thought and didn't apologize for his words. My grandmother died 10 years ago, and after her death, my grandfather became even more silent. But he talked to me. We sat in his garden, and he showed me how to care for cacti, how to prune roses, how to understand when a plant needs water and when it needs rest. "Plants are honest, Miro," he said. "They don't lie. If they're not doing well, they wilt. If they're doing well, they grow. People should learn from them." I loved him for that, for not forcing me to be someone else. Clarissa was always bright, loud, confident. She sold real estate, wore expensive suits, always knew what to say. I was the opposite. Quiet, unremarkable, with my little succulent and cactus shop on the outskirts. Prickly refuge. That's what I called it. Grandpa laughed when he saw the sign. "Well done," he said. "That's the right name. A refuge should be a place where no one bothers you." Over the last 6 months, he had become strange. He went to the notary several times, even though he had never been there before. He said things to me that I didn't understand. "Miro, remember where the book of poems is in the attic?" he said once when we were sitting in the kitchen. "Why?" I asked in surprise. "Just remember." Another time, he showed me the shed and said, "Look at the left wall. How many bricks are there?" I counted. 27 rows. "Goon," I said, and never brought up the subject again. I thought he was getting old, that his memory was failing, but now I understood. He was preparing me. I left the room and went to the kitchen. I poured myself some water and drank it slowly. My hands stopped shaking. I took out my phone and dialed the number I found in my grandfather's notes. Notary Gilbride. He answered after the 3rd ring. "Yes? This is Miranda Kello, Finian's granddaughter." "I was expecting your call," he said calmly. "Your grandfather left clear instructions. I have the official will certified by a notary, but there is an additional document. If one of the heirs brings me a specific letter of instruction within 7 days, this document will be activated. If not, special conditions will apply, which I cannot discuss at this time." "What kind of letter is it?" I asked. "Your grandfather said you would know where to look, or you wouldn't. It's part of his plan." He said goodbye and hung up. I stood in the kitchen and looked out the window. My grandfather's garden was there, behind the glass. Cacti, roses, old apple trees. Everything he had tended for years. When I returned to the room, only Clarissa, Denver, Roger, and Aunt Vivian were left. Mom hadn't come downstairs. Harrison was gone. "What did you find?" Clarissa asked sharply. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice was firm. "I called the notary," I said. "Grandfather left an official will and additional instructions. If someone finds the instruction letter and brings it to Gilbride within 7 days, this document will become active. Otherwise, something else will take effect." "Else? What else?" Roger asked quietly. He still hadn't moved from his chair. "He can't say. The will forbids it." Clarissa stood up abruptly. "You know where to look, right? Grandpa told you something. He mentioned you directly in the recording." I looked at her. She had always been more beautiful than me. Blonde hair, perfect makeup, perfect figure, but now she looked broken. "He did," I admitted, but I didn't understand what he meant. "You're lying," she stepped closer. "You were always his favorite. Quiet, obedient Miranda. He told you everything." "Clarissa, calm down," Denver intervened, but she pushed his hand away. "No, I'm tired of this. It's always like this. Miranda is good. Miranda is smart. Miranda knows everything." Roger finally stood up. "Stop," he said. "What if Miranda really does know where to look and is just waiting for us to leave?" Everyone turned to me. Vivian, who had been silent until then, smiled. "Finian always loved games," she said quietly, "and he always loved his granddaughter." I stood in the middle of the room and felt their eyes on me. They were waiting for an answer, waiting for me to say, "Yes, I know, here's a clue, let's go together," or "No, I don't know anything, let's search together." But I remained silent, because right now I was deciding the most important thing, whether to help them or compete against them. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my old bed in my grandfather's house and stared at the ceiling. Clarissa went home with Denver. Roger fell asleep in the chair downstairs. Mom never left the bedroom, and Harrison disappeared, and no one knew where he was. Aunt Vivian had gone home, saying goodbye. "See you tomorrow. It will be interesting." I twirled the phone in my hands and rewound my grandfather's recording over and over. "Miro, you know where to look for clues." Did I know? He had told me so many strange things in recent months. Dozens and dozens. About the importance of remembering details. But how was it all connected? In the morning, we all gathered by the cars. Mom looked terrible. Puffy eyes, unwashed hair. She didn't even try to look presentable. Roger kept his distance from her, not looking in her direction. Clarissa arrived alone without Denver. Her face was stony. Harrison was the last to arrive, wearing the same jeans and jacket as yesterday. He smelled of cigarettes and something sour. Gilbride's notary office was in the city center, in an old red brick building. We went up to the second floor. No one spoke. The secretary, a woman in her 50s with glasses on a chain, showed us to the reception room. Gilbride came out in 5 minutes. He was exactly as I had imagined him after our phone conversation. Thin, neat, wearing a dark suit with gray hair combed back. His face was emotionless, like that of a man who had seen too many family dramas and had long since ceased to be surprised. "Please, have a seat," he said, pointing to the chairs around a large table. We sat down. Garrison took the seat furthest away from everyone else. Mom sat next to Roger, but there was an empty space between them, even though they were physically close. Clarissa sat across from me, never taking her eyes off me. Gilbride opened a folder and took out several documents. "The will of Finian Kello," he began monotonously. "Drawn up on March 6th of this year, notarized. Signed by 2 witnesses. According to this document, the house and land, as well as savings in the amount of $150,000, are to be divided as follows. 10% each to Bridget Kello, Clarissa Winters, Roger Kello, Miranda Kello, and Harrison Treadwell. The remaining assets, including the car and personal belongings, are donated to charity. Vivian Reeder receives $1,500 as a symbolic thank you for her support." He paused and looked at us over his glasses. "However," he continued, "there is an additional document also notarized. This document contains special instructions. If any of the heirs, Bridget, Clarissa, Roger, Miranda, or Harrison, find the personal letter of instructions left by Mr. Kello and bring it to me within 7 days of today, that is, by 8 a.m. next Monday, this document revokes the first will. The person who brings the letter will have the right to redistribute the inheritance at their discretion." Silence. "At their discretion?" Clarissa asked. "Does that mean they can keep it all for themselves?" "Yes," Gilbride nodded. "Or divide it differently. Or give it to someone else altogether. Finian Kello was very clear in his instructions. He trusted the person who found the letter to make the right decision." "Where is this letter?" asked Harrison, leaning forward. "If I knew," Gilbride said calmly, "I would tell you. But Mr. Kello didn't tell me. He only said that he left clues and that one of the heirs would find them, or not. In that case, in 7 days we will sign the first will and the case will be closed." "What if 2 people find it at the same time?" I asked. "The first person to bring the document here, to my office, gets the right to choose," replied the notary. "The time is recorded by my secretary." He closed the folder. "Any questions?" No one answered. We sat and digested what we had heard. $150,000 plus the house. That's about $300,000 in total. Divided by 5. 45 each. But if someone finds that letter, they get the right to dispose of everything. "All right," Gilbride said, standing up. "The clock is ticking. I wish you luck." We left the office in silence. On the street, Harrison immediately went to his pickup truck without saying goodbye. Clarissa came up to me. "Listen," she said quietly so the others couldn't hear. "I know you know something. Grandpa talked to you more than he talked to all of us put together. Just be honest. Let's search together, and when we find it, we'll split it evenly." I looked at her. She was serious, but I remembered how she was always the one who got more. More attention, more love, more of everything. And now she was offering to split it evenly because she was afraid I would find it first. "I'll think about it," I said, and went to my car. The next 2 days were chaotic. Clarissa came to the house every morning and searched. She turned over all the cupboards in the attic, rummaged through the basement, even climbed onto the shed, even though she was afraid of heights. Harrison appeared at night. The first time I heard him was at 2 in the morning. He was looking for something in the kitchen, banging on the drawers. The second time was at 4 in the morning, digging in the garden. I went out onto the porch. "What are you doing?" I asked. He straightened up, leaning on his shovel. His face was red, sweat beading on his forehead. "Looking?" he grunted. "Grandpa wouldn't have buried important papers in the ground," I said. "They would have just rotted away." "How do you know he hid anything? Maybe he hid a chest, a metal one, with papers inside that would have gotten wet in the first rain." He threw the shovel on the ground. "It's easy for you, Miro. You were always his favorite. He told you everything, didn't he?" "No." I crossed my arms over my chest. "He said strange things, but I didn't understand them." "You're lying." He came closer. He smelled of alcohol. "I'm not lying," I said firmly. "And if you dig up the whole garden now, you won't find anything but clay." He stood there, breathing heavily, then turned abruptly and walked to his pickup truck. The engine roared, and he drove away, the tires spinning, leaving tracks in the gravel. On the third day, I decided to test one of my theories. Grandpa had mentioned a book of poems in the attic. I went up there in the morning while everyone was still asleep. The attic was old and smelled of dust and wood. Creaky floorboards, cobwebs in the corners, boxes of old things. Clarice hadn't looked everywhere. I knew where the book was. On a shelf by the small window facing east, Grandpa sometimes sat there and read. I took the book, an old volume of Robert Frost. I opened it. Inside, between the pages, was a bookmark. I pulled it out. There was an address and a number written on the card. Greenville Garden Center, 27. I took a photo with my phone and put the bookmark back. I went downstairs as quietly as I could. No one was awake in the living room yet. I went out the back door and drove away. Greenville Garden Center was outside the city, about a 20-minute drive. It was an old place I remembered from my childhood. My grandfather sometimes took me there to buy seedlings, but now it looked neglected. The sign was faded, and there were only 2 cars in the parking lot. I went inside. A guy in his mid-20s was standing at the cash register, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt with a tattoo on his arm. "Good afternoon," I approached him. "My grandfather rented a storage unit here, Finney and Kello." The guy looked at me, then at the computer. "Yeah, 27, he nodded. "Paid for a year in advance. Until July. Can I see it? Do you have the key?" I froze. "No, but then unfortunately I can't open it. Only with inheritance documents or a key. But he's dead. I'm his granddaughter." "I understand." He looked sympathetic but unyielding. "But rules are rules. Bring the documents or the key and I'll open it." I stood at the cash register and thought. The key. Where could the key be? "Thank you," I said and left. On the way home, I replayed everything my grandfather had said in my head. Bricks. The left wall of the barn, 27 rows. He asked me to count them. Maybe there? I arrived and went straight to the barn. Mom and Roger were sitting in the kitchen. I could hear their voices. Quiet, tense. Clarissa hadn't arrived yet. The barn was old, wooden, with one small window. The left wall inside was lined with bricks. Grandpa had done it 10 years ago, saying it would be warmer in winter. I started counting the rows from the top, 27. The third brick on the left protruded slightly. I gently tugged at it. It gave way. I pulled it out. Behind it was a small niche, and in it was a metal box. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a small key and a note on a piece of paper. "Well done, Miro." But that's not all. You'll find an envelope in the closet. Bring it to Gilbride. There will be a letter of instructions. But think about it. Do you want this responsibility? I stood in the barn holding the key and felt my heart beating too fast. I found it. I'm the first. If I go to the center now, pick up the envelope, and take it to Gilbride, I win. But do I want that? I put the key in my pocket and left the shed. And then I saw Vivian. She was standing by the back door of the house, looking at me. How long had she been standing there? Had she seen me come out of the shed? Find anything interesting? She asked calmly. No. I tried to keep my face impassive. Just looking at Grandpa's old tools. She smiled. I see. I walked past her into the house. I went up to my room. I opened the door and froze. Someone had turned everything upside down. The closet was open. Things were thrown on the floor. Even the mattress was torn off the bed. My heart was pounding. Someone had been here. Someone had been searching. I cautiously went inside, looking around. My clothes, books, even the box with succulents had been turned upside down. But they hadn't found the key because I was carrying it with me, in my pocket. I heard footsteps in the hallway and turned around sharply. Vivian was standing in the doorway. I saw Harrison leave here an hour ago, she said calmly. He was looking for something. Why didn't you stop him? She smiled. I wanted to see what he would do. It was interesting. I looked at her, trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. Vivian had always been a mystery, quiet, calm, but with that look that seemed to see right through you. Thanks for telling me, I muttered. She nodded and left. I locked the door and started picking things up off the floor. My hands were shaking. Harrison had been here. He was looking for something. That meant he suspected I had already found something. At 3 a.m, I heard noises downstairs again. This time they were coming from the kitchen. I got up, opened the door, and quietly went down the stairs. The kitchen light was on. I peeked in. Harrison was turning over the drawers of the kitchen table, throwing papers on the floor. What are you doing? I asked. He turned around sharply. His face was red, his eyes bloodshot. Looking, he muttered, It has to be somewhere. Harrison, stop. You've already searched my room. You haven't found anything. Maybe that's enough. He froze. You know I was there? Vivian had seen, and it was hard not to notice the room turned upside down. He clenched his fists but didn't come closer. He just stood there and looked at me. I need this money more than anyone else, he said quietly, almost in a whisper. You don't understand. I have reasons, important reasons. I looked into his eyes. For the first time in all these days, I saw him as neither angry nor aggressive, more like broken. What reasons? I asked more quietly. He turned away. None of your business. If you want me to believe you, tell me. He stood there, breathing heavily. Then he waved his hand. Forget it, he muttered and walked to the door. I heard the door slam and the engine of his pickup truck start. I stood in the kitchen among the scattered papers and thought, what's wrong with him? What reasons could he have for stealing, searching other people's rooms, digging up the garden in the middle of the night? I went back to my room, closed the door, took the key out of my pocket, and looked at it. Small, brass, number 27. Time was running out. 4 days. And now everyone suspects that I've found something important. I got up at 5 a.m. when it was still dark outside. I hadn't slept most of the night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, holding the key in my hand. The plan was simple. While everyone was asleep, go to the garden center, pick up the envelope, and come back. No one would know until it was too late. I got dressed quietly, grabbed my jacket, and slipped the key into my pocket. I went down the stairs, avoiding the creaky steps. The lamp was still on in the living room. Roger had fallen asleep in his chair, covered with his grandfather's old blanket. He didn't move when I walked past him. I opened the front door carefully so it wouldn't creak. The cold morning air hit my face. I stepped onto the porch and froze. Clarissa's car was parked by the gate. She was sitting behind the wheel, and when she saw me, she got out. Even in the dark, I could see the look on her face. Did you think I wouldn't understand? She said loudly. You left early yesterday morning. I hired a detective 2 days ago, Miro. He saw you driving to the Greenville Garden Center. I went there after you, but I didn't have a key. You have one, don't you? I stood on the porch, not knowing what to say. How long have you been waiting here? I finally asked. All night. Clarissa came closer. I knew you would leave early. Did you think I was stupid? That I wouldn't notice? I didn't think you were stupid. Then why didn't you tell me? I offered to look for it with you. I sighed. Because you wanted to split it evenly, only because you were afraid I'd find it first. Clarissa pressed her lips together. She didn't argue. Let's go, she said, and together. Now, Clarissa, either we go together, or I'll call everyone right now. Mom, Harrison, everyone, and we'll all go there together. What do you choose? I looked at her and realized she wasn't joking. If I refused, she would really call, and then everything would turn into a circus. Okay, I said. Together. We got into my car. Clarissa insisted because she was almost out of gas. We drove in silence. Outside, it was gradually getting lighter, the sky turning gray, then pale pink. Clarissa looked out the window and didn't turn her head. Why don't you trust me? She asked quietly when we had already left the city. Because you always got more, I replied honestly. More attention, more love, more of everything. And now you want me to share with you what Grandpa left me. He didn't leave it to you, he left clues. The only ones I could figure out. She finally looked at me. Do you think it was easy for me, being the one everyone looks at? Always smiling, always being perfect. You could be yourself, Miro, but I couldn't. Mom wanted me to be successful. Roger wanted me to be the perfect daughter, even though I wasn't his. Grandpa wanted me to be, I don't know, someone else. Only you could just be, and you were loved for it. I didn't know what to say. We drove to the garden center in silence. The parking lot was empty. The center wasn't open yet. It was only 6:20 a.m., but I could see the lights on inside. Someone was already working. Wait here, I said to Clarissa. No, she got out of the car. I'm coming with you. We walked up to the door. I knocked. A minute later, the same guy as yesterday appeared, in jeans and a flannel shirt, sleepy, with a cup of coffee in his hand. We're not open yet, he said. I know, I said, pulling out the key. But now I have the key to locker 27. Can I see it? He looked at the key, then at both of us, and sighed, rolling his eyes. Okay, he said, and let us in. The lockers were in the back, behind the shelves with seedlings and fertilizers. Small metal doors with numbers. 27 was at the end of the row. I put the key in the lock. My hands were shaking. Clarissa stood so close that I could hear her breathing. The lock clicked. I opened the door. Inside was a small storage unit, empty except for one thing. An envelope on the shelf. Large, brown, with a red wax seal. I reached out, but Clarissa grabbed my wrist. Stop, she said. What's in there? I don't know. You're lying. Grandpa told you. He didn't. He left a note saying there would be an envelope here, that's all. I pulled my hand away, but she held on tight. We'll open it together, Clarissa said firmly. It's not yours. Is it yours? Why? We stood there staring at each other. Then I yanked my hand away, grabbed the envelope, and stepped back. Clarissa lunged at me, but I was already holding the envelope to my chest. Miranda, give it back! No! She tried to grab it, and I pushed her away. We were pushing each other around in the middle of the small cubicle, like children. The envelope crumpled in my hands. I could hear something rustling inside. Another envelope, smaller. What's going on here? The young man stood in the doorway looking at us. We both froze. Nothing, I said, breathing heavily. Everything's fine. It doesn't look like it, he frowned. Maybe you should leave. We're leaving. I walked around Clarissa and out of the storage room. She ran after me through the entire center. I pushed the door open and ran out into the parking lot. I ran to the car, opened it, threw the envelope on the passenger seat, and started the engine. Clarissa was knocking on the window. Miro, open up! Don't do this! I drove out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing in the middle of the asphalt, shouting something, but I couldn't hear her words. The phone rang before I got onto the highway. Clarissa. I didn't answer. It rang again and again. Finally, I turned off the sound. A minute later, a message came. I pulled over to the side of the road and read it. "Miro, please, I need your help. I have debts. $45,000. I took out a loan to open my own agency. I thought I could do it, but I couldn't. Few clients, lots of expenses. I hid it from Denver. If he finds out, he'll file for divorce. He won't forgive me for lying. Please, you're my sister, the only person who can help. The will is my only chance." Then another. "I know you hate me, but I love you. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it." I sat in the car and stared at the screen. 45,000, a failed business. A Denver who knows nothing. I imagined Clarissa, always confident, always successful, now drowning in debt and unable to ask for help. I put down the phone and picked up the envelope. I broke the seal. Inside were 2 envelopes. One was official, white with a notary's seal and the words, "Letter of instruction, to be given to Gilbride by the 8th day inclusive." The other was plain paper with the words, "To Miranda, read alone." I put the official envelope aside and opened mine. Inside was a letter written in my grandfather's handwriting. "Miro, if you are reading this, you have won. You found the clues, you found the key, you found the letter. Give the official envelope to Gilbride, and he will give you the right to decide the fate of the inheritance. You can keep it all for yourself. You can divide it differently. It's your choice. But I want you to know that I have another bank account, $150,000. The details are attached to this letter. This money is for you alone, regardless of what you decide to do with the inheritance. Because you are the only one who came to me, not for money. You came just to be with me, to plant flowers, talk about plants, sit together in silence. You are the only one who loved me just like that. You don't have to share this money with anyone. Take it and live your life. Expand your store, travel, do whatever you want. You deserve your freedom. But remember, inheritance is not just money, it is responsibility. Family values are not what we say. They are what we do when it is not in anyone's interest, to be honest. I love you, Miro. I always have. Grandpa Finian. I sat in the car and cried. For the first time in all these days, I allowed myself to cry. 150,000, mine alone. Now, I could take it and leave my family to divide the rest according to the first will. Or I could take the official letter to Gilbride and take responsibility for everyone. I wiped my tears, started the car, and drove home. When I pulled up to the house, it was already 9 in the morning. Mom's car was in the driveway. I went inside. Bridget and Roger were sitting at the kitchen table. Mom was crying. Roger was staring at the wall. "Miro," Mom stood up when she saw me. "Where have you been?" "I was driving." I walked past them to the stairs. "Clarissa called," Mom said. "She says you found everything. You're going to the notary." I stopped. "She said that?" "Yes." She was crying. "She asked why you didn't want to help her." I turned around. Roger finally looked at me. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "Did you find the letter?" I nodded. Bridget jumped up. "Then you can decide? For everyone?" "Yes." She came closer and grabbed my hands. "Miro, please, I need help. I have debts. 30,000. I gambled at the casino." "Online." Roger found out yesterday. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. "Please don't tell Clarissa. She won't understand." I looked at my mother, her swollen eyes, her trembling hands. Roger behind her, silent, disappointed. "I'll think about it," I said, and freed my hands. "Miro," I said, "I'll think about it." I went up to my room and closed the door. I put the envelopes on the table. I sat down on the bed. Everyone had secrets. Clarissa had a failed business and debts. Mom had the casino. Harrison had something he still hadn't told me about. What was I supposed to do with all this? The phone rang. Unknown number. "Yes," I answered. "Miranda Kello?" A woman's voice, formal. This is Gilbraid's notary office. Your sister Clarissa just called back and said you found a document. Mr. Gilbraid is waiting for you today. The sooner, the better. I'll be there, I said. Give me an hour. I hung up the phone. I took the official envelope. I looked at it one last time. If I took it, there would be no turning back. I went downstairs. Mom and Roger were still sitting in the kitchen. I'm going to the notary, I said. Right now. Miro, wait. Mom stood up. But I was already heading for the door. I got in the car, put the envelope on the seat next to me, and started the engine. I drove out of the yard without looking back. On the way, the phone rang again. Clarissa, Bridget, even Harrison. I didn't answer any of the calls. Gilbraid's office was in the city center. I parked, took the envelope, and went inside. The secretary nodded to me. Mr. Gilbraid is waiting. He was sitting at his desk, neat and calm as always. Miss Kello, he pointed to a chair. Sit down. I sat down and put the envelope on the table. He took it, checked the seal, opened it, and pulled out the letter. He read silently for a few minutes. All right, he said finally. This is your grandfather's genuine letter of instruction. According to this document, you have the right to redistribute the inheritance at your discretion. You have 24 hours to convene a family meeting and announce your decision. If you do not announce it, the first shall automatically take effect, and the inheritance will be divided, as I said earlier. 24 hours, I repeated. Yes, until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. He handed me the paper. Sign here. This is confirmation that you have received the right to choose. I signed. My hand didn't shake. Strange. Thank you, I said and stood up. Good luck, Miss Kello. Gilbraid looked at me over his glasses. Your grandfather was a wise man. I hope you will live up to his trust. I left the office. I went down the stairs. I pushed the door open to the street and froze. Everyone was standing at the entrance. Harrison with Aunt Vivian, Clarissa with Denver, Bridget with Roger. They were all looking at me. You really did it, Harrison said. His voice was quiet, but there was anger in it. You stole our chance. I didn't steal anything, I replied. I found what Grandpa wanted me to find. Because you've always been the favorite. He took a step forward, but Vivian put her hand on his shoulder. Calm down, she said quietly. Clarissa stood to the side. She didn't cry or scream. She just looked at me, and there was pain in her eyes. Denver was holding her hand, but he looked confused. He still didn't understand what was going on. Bridget was crying. Roger was the only one who came up to me. He stopped a step away and said quietly, I hope you know what you're doing, Miro. I looked at them all, my family, broken, full of secrets, full of pain. And now their fate was in my hands. I walked past them to the car. No one stopped me. I got in, started the engine, and drove away. And only when I was far away from them did I allow myself to think, what the hell am I going to do? I sat on the floor of my room and stared at a piece of paper. Bank account details, number, access code, everything I needed. $150,000, mine alone. Grandpa had written it clearly. Regardless of what you decide to do with the inheritance. I could go to the bank tomorrow, withdraw the money, and disappear. Expand my store. Open a second location. Travel. Live my life without thinking about a family torn apart by greed and secrets. But I couldn't bring myself to get up and leave. I thought about Clarissa. $45,000 in debt. A failed business that Denver doesn't know about. She had always been strong, always confident, and now she was drowning and couldn't ask for help. I thought about my mother. $30,000 at the casino. Roger knows, and their marriage is hanging by a thread. My mother, who always tried to look respectable, to control everything, but in reality was losing control of her own life. She thought about Harrison. He stole from her grandfather. But why? What reasons is he still hiding? It was getting dark outside. I didn't turn on the light. I just sat in the dark and looked at that piece of paper. The phone was lying nearby, turned off. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I sat in the dark for another hour. Then I lay down without undressing. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. I heard something thud downstairs, probably Roger going to bed in the guest room. Mom was crying in the kitchen, quietly, but I could hear her. At 2 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock at the door. I got up and opened it. It was Harrison. He looked different. Not drunk, not angry, just tired. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. 5 minutes. I stepped back and let him in. He came in but didn't sit down. He stood in the middle of the room with his hands in his pockets. "I want to tell you something," he began, "the truth, about why I stole from my grandfather." I waited. "I have a daughter," he said, and took out his phone. He showed me a photo. A little girl in a wheelchair with light hair, smiling. "She's 9 years old. Lisa. She has cerebral palsy." I looked at the photo and didn't know what to say. "I became a father at 18, Harrison continued. "Her mother, Shelby, was my girlfriend back in school. When she got pregnant, I got scared. I ran away. I moved here to my grandfather's and started working in a warehouse. I didn't see Lisa for the first 3 years of her life." He put his phone away. "Then Shelby called. She said Lisa needed surgery, spinal surgery, so she could at least sit up on her own. $40,000. I didn't have that kind of money. I was working at the warehouse for minimum wage. I couldn't ask my grandfather. I was too ashamed. He thought I was a normal person. Oh, didn't know I had abandoned my child." Harrison sat down on the edge of the bed and folded his arms. "So I stole it. I knew the code to the safe. I knew there was money in there. I took $30,000. That's how much was there. Shelby found the rest herself. I don't know how. The surgery was done. Lizzie got better, but my grandfather knew. He never said anything to me about it, but I could see how he looked at me. Disappointment. I wanted to return the money, but I couldn't. Debts, alimony, life. Now Shelby won't let me see Lisa because I only pay $300 a month. That's all I can afford. She says I'm a bad father. And she's right." He looked at me. "I'm not asking you to give me everything. I don't deserve it. Just give me a chance to be a normal father. At least a little. So Lisa knows she has a dad who isn't just a cowardly piece of shit." I looked at him and for the first time saw not the Harrison who yelled and threatened, but a man broken by his own mistakes. "Show me more photos," I asked. He took out his phone. He showed me a few more. Lisa with her mother, Lisa in rehab, Lisa smiling at the camera. One photo had a date on it, 3 months ago. "Have you seen her recently?" I asked. "Once every 6 months, Shelby allows me to visit for a day. The last time was in July. The next time will be at Christmas if I pay child support. How much do you need?" He hesitated. "If I had $50,000, I would pay off my debts, pay Shelby everything I owe her, and set aside money for future rehab. Maybe she would let me see Lisa more often. Maybe I could be a real father. I don't know, but I want to try." He stood up. "Thanks for listening. I won't bother you anymore." He left, closing the door quietly. I sat and stared at the spot where he had been standing. Everyone had secrets. Everyone had reasons. And now I had to decide who deserved a second chance. I didn't sleep until morning. I just sat at the table and wrote. Numbers, names, amounts, how much each person needed, what would be fair, what would be right. I crossed things out, rewrote them, crossed them out again. When it got light outside, I took my phone and dialed Clarissa's number. "Miro?" She answered after the first ring. Her voice was hoarse. She hadn't slept either. "Come to Grandpa's house at 8 in the morning," I said. "Everyone. You, Denver, Mom, Roger, Harrison, Vivian. I'll announce my decision." You've already decided?" "Yes." "Miro, please tell me." She started to cry. "Please don't leave me with nothing. I won't ask for much. Just something. So I can—" "At 8, I interrupted. "Don't be late." I hung up the phone. I looked at the paper in front of me. My decision was written there. But was it the right one? I spent the next 2 hours in my grandfather's garden, watering cacti, cutting off dry leaves, loosening the soil. Plants don't ask questions. They don't demand explanations. They just grow or wither, honestly. At 8 o'clock, they began to arrive. Clarissa and Denver were the first to arrive. She looked terrible. No makeup, wearing simple jeans and a sweatshirt. Denver held her hand. Then Mom and Roger arrived in separate cars. They didn't even look at each other. Harrison was the last to arrive in his beat-up pickup truck. Vivian was already in the house. She had arrived the night before and spent the night in the guest room. I met them in the living room. They sat down, Clarissa and Denver on the sofa, Mom in an armchair, Roger on a chair by the window, Harrison standing by the door, Vivian in the corner of the room. I stood in front of them with a piece of paper in my hands. My decision was written on it, but my fingers were shaking. "I've made a decision," I began, "but before I announce it, each of you must tell the truth, the whole truth. About debts, about secrets, about everything you've been hiding from each other. Because if you're not honest now, I'll just take everything and leave." You have 1 minute to think. Silence. They looked at each other, then at me. "Are you serious?" Clarissa asked quietly. "Absolutely." "But," Mom began. "1 minute," I interrupted. "Either honesty or I'm leaving. Choose." The silence grew heavier. Harrison shifted from foot to foot. Roger stared out the window. Mom clasped her hands on her lap. Suddenly, Denver stood up. "Then I'll start," he said loudly. "After all, I have something to say." Clarissa turned her head sharply toward him. "Denver, what are you—" she began, but he raised his hand. "No, Clarissa. Enough. If we're going to be honest, I'll be honest." He looked at all of us. "I know about Clarissa's debts," he said calmly. "I've known for 3 months. She thought she was hiding it, but I saw the statements. I saw how nervous she was, how she couldn't sleep at night. 45,000 in debt because of a failed agency." Clarissa froze. Her face turned white. "I'm not filing for divorce because of this," Denver continued. "But I'm filing for divorce because she doesn't trust me. Because instead of coming to me and saying, 'I have problems, help me,' she lies. She hides things. She pretends that everything is fine. I can't live with someone who doesn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." He looked at Clarissa. "I loved you. I still love you. But I'm tired of the lies, of you playing the role of the perfect wife, the perfect woman, when in reality you're falling apart inside and won't let me help you." Clarissa cried. Not loudly, just tears running down her face. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid that you would leave me if you found out who I really am. A failure, a fool, someone who can't even keep her own business together." "You're not a failure," Denver said quietly. "You're just human. But you didn't let me see you as human." Only a mask. He sat back down on the sofa but didn't take her hand. The lie was killing us all, and now it was time to either die with it or try to survive without it. "Does anyone else want to say anything?" I asked quietly. Mom stood up. Her hands were shaking, but she stood straight. "Oh, I lost 30,000 at the casino," she said loudly. "Online, over the last 2 years. I couldn't stop. I thought I'd win it back next time, but I only lost more. Roger found out 3 days ago. I wanted to hide it until the end, but I can't anymore." She looked at Roger. "I'm sorry. I destroyed our marriage, I know, but I want you to know that I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it because I was afraid of being alone. When you were away on business trips, I sat at home alone, and I started gambling. At first, just a little, then more, then I couldn't stop." Roger didn't look at her. He just sat and stared out the window. Harrison stepped forward. "I have a daughter," he said. 9 years old, cerebral palsy. I stole money from my grandfather for her operation 5 years ago. I didn't ask because I was ashamed that I abandoned her when she was born. Now I'm trying to be a father, but I can't pay enough child support. I work in a warehouse and can barely make ends meet. I want a chance to be a normal father, at least to try." He fell silent. Everyone looked at each other. The room was full of pain, but for the first time, it was honest pain. No masks. I looked at the paper in my hands. My decision. I already knew what I was going to say, but now, after hearing everything, I understood that everything could change. "All right," I said quietly. "Now it's my turn." Everyone looked at me, waiting. I unfolded the paper, but before I started reading, I looked at them all and said, "Grandpa left me not only the right to redistribute the inheritance, he left me another bank account, $150,000, just for me. Regardless of my decision about the rest, I could take this money and leave you to divide what's left. But I won't do that, because my grandfather taught me something more important than money." I paused. He taught me that family values aren't what we say. They're what we do when things get tough, and right now, things are tough for all of us. I started reading from the sheet of paper, but then I stopped, because I realized that what I had written the night before was no longer appropriate. After what I had just heard, everything was different. I raised my head and looked at them. "I need another 20 minutes, I said. "Wait here, I'll be right back." And I left the room, leaving them in tense silence, not knowing what would happen next. I stood in the hallway outside my grandfather's office and looked at the paper in my hands. What I had written the night before was no longer appropriate. After everything they had said about the debts, about Harrison's daughter, about my mother's casino, about Clarissa's fears, I realized that justice is not equality. It is giving everyone what they need. I picked up a pen and quickly rewrote the numbers. I counted, crossed out, counted again. 20 minutes flew by. When I returned to the living room, they were sitting in the same position. Clarissa was leaning against Denver, and he was holding her hand. Mom was looking at the floor. Roger was looking out the window. Garrison stood by the door with his hands in his pockets. Vivian sat quietly in the corner. I stood in front of them with a new sheet of paper. "I've made a decision," I said, "and I want you to listen to me before you say anything." They nodded. "The house is for sale." I already spoke to the realtor the day before yesterday, just in case. She valued it at $200,000, not $150,000 as we thought, plus Grandpa's savings, $150,000, a total of $350,000 in inheritance. I paused. "First, the debts will be paid off. Mom, you'll get $30,000 to pay off your casino debts. But there's a condition. Within a month, you have to sign up for a support group for people with gambling addictions and attend regularly. If you don't do this, all the money will go to charity. I'll be checking." Mom raised her head. Her eyes were wet, but she nodded. "Clarissa, you get $45,000 to pay off the agency's debt, in full, so you can start with a clean slate." Clarissa covered her face with her hands. Denver put his arm around her shoulders. "Harrison," I looked at him, "you get $50,000 to pay off all your child support debts to Shelby, for Lisa's rehab, for everything she needs. I want you to be a normal father, not perfect, just normal, one who tries." Harrison stood and looked at me. His lips trembled, but he didn't cry. He just nodded. "Vivian," I turned to my aunt, "Grandpa wanted you to get $15,000, as a thank you for being the only one who didn't play this game for money. You just watched and waited. And I respect that." Vivian smiled quietly. "After paying off the debts, there's $210,000 left," I continued. "I'm dividing it equally among the 5 of us. Mom, Clarissa, Roger, Harrison, and me. $42,000 each." Silence. "But Miro," Clarissa began, "you still have that account?" "Yes," I nodded. "I have a personal account with $150,000 that Grandpa left to me alone. You all know about it. I told you yesterday, that money is mine. Grandpa wrote that it is separate from the inheritance, but I'm dividing the rest fairly, in total. Mom, you get $72,000, Clarissa, $87,000. Harrison 92, Roger 42, Vivian 15, and I get 42 from the inheritance plus 100 and 50 from my personal account. I folded the paper. This is my decision. If anyone disagrees, speak now. No one spoke. Then Harrison stepped forward. 92,000, he repeated quietly. That's more than I could have hoped for even in my wildest dreams. You deserve a chance, I said. Use it wisely. He nodded, then suddenly came over and hugged me. Briefly, awkwardly, I flinched at the surprise but hugged him back. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, Miro. Mom stood up and came over to me. She took my hands in hers. I'll go to support group, she said firmly. I promise. I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm tired of the lies. I know, Mom, I said quietly. Clarissa came over too. She hugged me tightly the way she hadn't hugged me in many years. You saved me, she whispered. You didn't have to, but you did. You're my sister, I replied. Even when we didn't get along, you're still my sister. Roger was the last to approach. He looked me in the eyes. Grandpa knew what he was doing when he trusted you, he said. Thank you, Miro, for everything. He put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed it lightly, then walked away. Vivian stood up and came over to me when everyone else had dispersed around the room, discussing the details. Finian would have been proud, she said quietly. You did what he wanted. You made them be honest, and you gave them a chance to start over. I hope they don't waste it, I replied. They won't, Vivian smiled, because now they know the price of lies. The next 2 weeks were chaotic. The realtor brought in buyers, a young couple with a child, and they liked the house right away. They signed the contract in 10 days, $200,000. I took the money and brought it to Gilbride. He made everything official and distributed it according to my decision. Mom signed up for a support group on Thursday evening. I went with her to the first session. I sat in the hallway and waited. When she came out, she looked tired but relieved. There are people there like me, she said in the car. I'm not alone. Roger moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Sometimes he visited my mother, not as a husband, but as a friend. They drank coffee in the kitchen and talked. I saw them once when I came to pick up the last of my things from the house. They were laughing about something. For the first time in many years, Clarissa deposited the money in the bank and paid off her debt. She quit the agency where she worked and got a job at another one, a regular manager position with no ambitions to become the owner. Denver stayed with her, after all. They started going to couples therapy. We're learning to tell the truth, Clarissa told me on the phone. Harrison went to Shelby. He paid off all his child support debts. She was shocked. Then he showed her the money he had set aside for Lisa's next rehab sessions. Shelby cried. She allowed him to see his daughter every weekend. He sent me a photo a week later. He and Lisa in the park, the girl in a wheelchair smiling at the camera, Harrison standing next to her holding her hand. Caption, she said she missed her dad. I opened a second location for my store a month later. It was a small space on the other side of town, closer to downtown. I hired an assistant, Tess, a 23-year-old girl. She was quiet and uncertain, reminding me of myself 5 years ago. On her first day, she trembled when she spoke to customers. Don't be afraid, I told her. You know more than you think. Just trust yourself. She looked at me and smiled timidly. You remind me of someone, she said. I don't know who, just someone who understands. I smiled too. 3 months later, life began to take on a new shape. Mom went to support group regularly, twice a week. She met a woman there named Carol, and they started having coffee together after the meetings. Mom seemed calmer. She even started talking to me more. Not about money, not about problems, just about life. Roger found a job at a private bus company where the schedule was better. He visited my mother once a week, and they cooked dinner together, not as husband and wife, but as old friends. They officially divorced 2 months after the division of the inheritance. But it was amicable. Clarissa went to Curtis Nailen. I offered to go with her, but she said she wanted to go alone. She came back 2 days later. We sat in my shop, drank tea, and she told me everything. He lives in a small house, Clarissa said. He works in a workshop repairing cars. He has a wife. They've been married for 20 years. She knew about me. She knew that he had once had an affair with my mother. She sat with us while we talked. What is he like? I asked. Normal. Clarissa smiled. Just a man, not a hero, not a villain. He didn't ask me to become a family or anything like that. He just said that if I wanted to talk, he wouldn't mind. Write, call, visit, no pressure. That's enough for me. I nodded. How are things with Denver? Better, Clarissa smiled, but more sincerely this time. We're seeing a psychologist, learning to tell the truth. It's hard. I'm used to hiding things, but I'm trying. And so is he. I hugged her. I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of you. She hugged me back. You saved us all, Miro, not just with money, just by making us be honest. Harrison sent me photos every 2 weeks. Lisa at rehab. Lisa at home with her mother, Shelby. Lisa and Harrison watching cartoons together. He also wrote that he had found a new job at a factory that paid better than the warehouse. I'm trying to be better, he wrote. Vivian came to my store every Wednesday. We sat in a small room in the back, drank tea, and talked. About her grandfather, about her family, about life. Roger came to the store once a month. He never talked much, just looked at the plants, picked one, paid, and left. It was his way of saying thank you without words. I understood. One day, 4 months after the inheritance was divided, Clarissa came to the shop with a box. I found this in the garage, and she said, I thought you might want to see it. Inside were old photo albums. We sat down in the back room and opened the first album. Grandpa was young, wearing a railroad uniform. Grandma was next to him, smiling. Mom was still young, and Roger was young, with thick hair. Clarissa and I were little, playing in the garden. Look, Clarissa pointed to one photo. Here, I'm holding your hand. I looked. We were standing by Grandpa's apple tree, Clarissa holding my hand tightly. We were both smiling. We were close once, Clarissa said quietly. When did we forget that? I don't know, I replied, but maybe it's not too late to start again. She looked at me. Denver and I have decided to try for a baby, she said. A real try. No lies, no hiding. If it works out, I want you to be in this child's life. Not just as an aunt, as a real person who will be there. I felt my eyes sting. I will, I promised. We sat together looking at old photos, and for the first time in many years, there was no wall between us. In the evening, when Clarissa left, I stayed in the store alone. Tess had already closed the second location and gone home. I walked between the rows of plants, checked the soil, and trimmed the dry leaves. On the windowsill stood the same cactus that my grandfather had given me when I was 10 years old, small, prickly, resilient. I watered it carefully, touching the thorns with my finger. Thank you, Grandpa, I whispered, for everything. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Harrison? I opened it. A photo of Lisa. She was sitting in a stroller, holding a drawing in her hands. A house, trees, people. The caption under the photo read, She drew our family, and she asked when she would meet Aunt Miranda. Maybe you'll come to her birthday next month. I smiled. I wrote, I'll definitely come. Tell her I'm already buying a present. I put down my phone and looked around the shop. Plants all around. Silence, peace. My place. The one I created myself. My family isn't perfect. Mom was still struggling with her addiction. Clarissa was still learning to trust. Harrison was still trying to be a father after many years of absence. Roger still didn't know how to live alone. But we were all trying. We were learning to be honest. We were learning to support each other not only with words, but with actions. My grandfather's legacy wasn't money. It wasn't a house, savings, or a bank account. His legacy was the choice he gave me. The choice to save the family or let it fall apart. The choice to be honest or to hide. The choice to reach out or turn away. Grandpa didn't give me property. He gave me the power to change everything. And I did. I turned off the lights in the store and went outside. The night was warm and starry. I stood at the door and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, among those stars, my grandfather was watching me. I believed it, and I knew he was smiling because I did what he wanted. I made us a family. Not perfect, but real. And that was the most valuable thing I could have gotten.